24 Buyer-Broker Employment Agreement, Customer or Client. The Buyer-Broker Exclusive Employment Agreement, BBEEA. Sarah had just finished an open house when a young couple walked through the front door. "We're just starting to look," the husband said. "Can you show us a few homes this afternoon?" A few years ago, Sarah probably would have grabbed her keys and started showing property. Today, she smiled. "I'd be happy to help," she replied. "Before we begin, let's spend a few minutes talking about how buyer representation works." The couple looked surprised. "We thought we just called an agent and looked at houses." David, who had been mentoring Sarah throughout her career, happened to walk by. He smiled and said, "That's exactly why we have this conversation first. A different real estate environment." Throughout this course, you've learned that agency relationships are built on disclosure, communication, and trust. Today's Arizona real estate market places even greater importance on clearly defining those relationships before a buyer ever steps inside their first home. The Buyer-Broker Exclusive Employment Agreement, BBEEA, is the document that creates that relationship. Rather than simply being viewed as a commission agreement, the BBEEA establishes the professional relationship between the buyer and the broker. It explains the services the broker will provide, the obligations of both parties, how compensation will be handled, and the length of the agreement. Just as sellers sign a listing agreement before marketing their property, buyers now enter into a written agreement before beginning their home search. Why the BBEEA matters. Many buyers have never purchased a home before. Some assume the listing agent represents everyone involved in the transaction. Others believe buyer representation is automatically free. Neither assumption is necessarily correct. One of your responsibilities as a real estate professional is to educate buyers before they begin shopping for homes. This conversation should explain who you represent, the fiduciary duties you owe your client, how compensation works, and the value you bring to the transaction. The BBEEA simply puts those discussions into writing. Your value goes far beyond opening doors. David often reminded new agents of something they never forgot. "If all we did was unlock doors," he said, "there wouldn't be a licensing law." Professional buyer representation involves much more than showing homes. You help buyers understand financing options by directing them to qualified lenders. You explain contracts and timelines. You coordinate inspections, appraisals, title work, and escrow. You negotiate on your client's behalf. You identify potential issues before they become expensive problems. Most importantly, you guide buyers through one of the largest financial decisions they may ever make. Those services have value. The BBEEA helps buyers understand exactly what that value includes before the home search begins. Compensation should never be a surprise. One of the most important discussions during the buyer consultation involves compensation. Arizona law requires real estate employment agreements to clearly identify how the broker will be compensated. The amount is always negotiable. During negotiations, the buyer may request that the seller contribute toward the buyer-broker's compensation as part of the overall purchase offer. If the seller agrees, those funds may satisfy all or part of the buyer's obligation under the BBEEA. If the seller declines, the agreement between the buyer and the broker controls how compensation is handled. By discussing this before homes are shown, everyone understands the process from the beginning, helping avoid misunderstandings later. Arizona law requires real estate employment agreements to contain specific elements to be enforceable. The agreement should clearly identify the parties, define the broker's compensation, include beginning and ending dates, and be signed by everyone involved. Leaving important sections blank may create unnecessary legal issues later. A carefully completed agreement protects both the buyer and the broker. Building trust from day one, some buyers may hesitate when asked to sign a buyer-broker exclusive employment agreement. That hesitation is not a problem. It is an opportunity. Rather than simply sliding paperwork across the table, explain why the agreement exists. Walk through each section together. Answer questions honestly. Explain your responsibilities. Discuss how compensation works. When buyers understand the agreement, they usually become much more comfortable signing it because they recognize that the document protects both parties. Trust is built through education, not paperwork. Professional representation begins before the first showing. Before Sarah scheduled that first home tour, she reviewed the BBEEA with the couple. She explained agency. She discussed compensation. She answered every question they had. Only then did they begin looking at homes. As they left her office, the wife smiled. "I'm glad we talked first," she said. "Now we understand exactly how this works." David looked over at Sarah and quietly said, "That's what professional representation looks like." Throughout this course, You've learned that successful real estate professionals don't simply complete transactions. They educate, they communicate, they disclose, they protect the public. The buyer-broker exclusive employment agreement is simply another tool that helps accomplish those goals while creating clear expectations for everyone involved. Online discussion question 1. Why is it important to explain the buyer-broker exclusive employment agreement before showing homes? Answer. Explaining the BBEEA before showing homes establishes clear expectations, defines the agency relationship, explains compensation, and helps the buyer understand the broker's professional responsibilities before beginning the home search. Online discussion question 2. How does the BBEEA protect both the buyer and the broker? The agreement clearly documents each party's responsibilities, establishes compensation, defines the agency relationship, and helps prevent misunderstandings throughout the transaction. Online discussion question 3. Besides showing homes, what are some valuable services a buyer's broker provides? Answer. A buyer's broker educates clients, negotiates contracts, coordinates inspections and escrow, communicates with lenders and title companies, explains timelines, identifies potential risks, and guides buyers through the entire purchase process while protecting their interests.